we always talk about what we do for the week. And last week I talked about strawberry days. And this week I've been thinking about last week. I'm thinking about years ago when they did something to get rid of all the bats in the old fire station before this new one was built.
Okay.
And all the bats, because we live in a house that was 150 years old, all the bats came to our house. And
Let's go back to that one place.
Right? We had no idea. But
oh my god!
I was thinking about strawberry days, and I was thinking one day we were walking down the sidewalk, and it was dusk, and you could see all these bats, like over 300, just fly out from underneath our eaves and just spread all over strawberry. It was so incredible. I know it sounds terrible. We don't have them anymore. We got rid of them. We waited for them to migrate, and then we sealed it. We sealed our whole attic up so they couldn't get in.
I have had bats before, but I don't know if I have them anymore.
It was such a really cool experience to see all these bats just spread out all over. And there were people walking on the sidewalk. It was just something that you'll never see again.
That's so cool. Now that reminds me of Star Wars too, but I can't remember my other Star Wars story. We're trying to think, what was that?
We missed it in prayer number 2. Unanswered prayers number 2. So we'll get back to that. But tell me your Star Wars story that reminds you of.
I can't remember. That's the problem. Well, just thinking about the fleets going out, like they all appear there in the last scene, and they're going to have a big battle.
Like in a second, they go from here to there.
I know, it's so cool. They just all appear through the time warp,
Yeah.
Okay, well, today we just can't get over this unanswered prayer situation, and we want to keep talking about it because this is when the rubber meets the road, kind of, this is when you have to adjust and catch your balance and do all this stuff while you're waiting for the Lord. And waiting on the Lord is a really common theme.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting. We're having this little conversation about it before we got on with you. Just talking about a little bit more about what our expectations are. Are our expectations maybe a little too high? Is that possibly why we feel like our prayers are unanswered?
Or are they too specific?
Like,
are we saying, Lord, I really want, this is exactly what I want. And the Lord, this happened to my sister. Okay, so my sister was divorced, and she met this guy on a plane, and they just hit it off. They just talk, chat, and text afterwards, all sorts of stuff. But she had this impression that she was going to meet somebody in April. So this was January, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what. See, this is like a situation where the Lord gives you some information, and it's something you can't know, because He often does that. Like, because there are things we can't know that are important. So she had this feeling for a long time that something was going to happen in April, and she was like, so I'm like, right, that's going to happen, with all my faith. And so she met this guy earlier, and he was talking to her, and she was praying about it and really thinking about it, and it was really fun because it was the first person that she had any interest in after her divorce, and she said she was praying about it one day, and the Lord I'll have to tell you her prayer method here next video, but He kind of gave her the impression he's like, he's good. He's my son. You might love him, but go ahead if you want to pick him, but I have somebody in mind for you. And it was really interesting, just the full free agency, do what you want. And she's like, and she did the thing that we've been talking about. Okay, I trust the Lord. He's got something planned for me. And lo and behold, the last day of April, she met somebody on a dating site, and it's really, she cut that guy had also the first guy, he had some good things and some not so great things,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it was just really interesting how the Lord's like, go ahead, do that if you want. But I do have a plan for you if you want to do my plan.
Mm.
And eventually she was able to say, okay, I'm going to let go of this thrill of these feelings, and I'm going to look seriously at the things that, instead of just brushing off the negative things. That was
Yeah.
a long story, sorry. But anyway, it was really cool because the Lord actually did have a plan for her.
Well, my story is completely different. I remember years ago talking with a lot of people about, listening to the Spirit, trying to listen to what God's trying to tell you. And I remember at the time being taught, and you got to pray about walking across the street in case you get hit.
What
You got to pray,
toothpaste?
like every little detail you have to pray about. And I think that could very possibly be an incredible disappointment in life because you're not necessarily getting those answers. Our expectations are maybe a little bit off.
Yes, the micromanagement thing, right?
Yeah.
The Lord, oh, Jenny, tell your story about driving. I thought that was excellent. Yeah, with the Lord, okay. The Lord,
I don't remember my
okay,
story.
it was so good. I'll tell you.
Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you.
Oh,
When you pick it up.
I do remember
Yeah,
the
go,
story.
go.
Actually, I listened to Bryce on Talking Scripture,
It's a good
and
analogy.
his analogy is great. He says, when you get into a car and you're taking somebody home and you don't know where they live and they say, hey, I live in Salt Lake, you know enough to get on the freeway and start heading to Salt Lake. This person that you're taking home isn't going to say, oh, turn here on the freeway. Oh, you've got another 6 miles to go. Oh, another 5. Oh, another 4 miles.
Yeah.
You're going to get there. That's not how we're directed to get to that person's house.
That's actually annoying.
Yeah, it's annoying. So instead, this person will say, I live in Sandy, off 90th South. So you've got 15 minutes of driving where you're not being instructed at all because you know that you're going to Sandy. And then as you get closer, then you might get a little bit more information to lead you to the right place where you need to be. And I think that's very similar to how God works in our lives. He will talk to us when he has something important he needs to tell us. He will talk to us if it's something big that he needs to comfort us with. He will talk to us when maybe we're in the midst of being deceived. But he doesn't go very far from us, and he doesn't let us go very far from him. We keep close to each other. I mean, we can obviously choose to walk away and say, I'm not interested. And at that point, that's our free agency also.
And he
he's
also
not going to
doesn't give
interfere.
us. He doesn't give us like a whole menu of things that we're going to be doing next week and the week after that. And he doesn't spell our lives out for us. He just lets us. He's like, it's kind of like he just gives us a little nudge. Like if there was someone to nudge your bowling ball back into the lake, almost like the bumper pads. It's
Yeah.
like he doesn't. He's anyway. Yeah.
It's like Nephi when he excuse me, when he is when his bow breaks, right? Laman and Lemuel are mad. Even Lehi is a little frustrated. He doesn't say, God told me to go make a new bow. He just thought, this thought came to him, maybe I should make a new bow. Maybe it was God. Maybe he just had that common sense.
Maybe he just thought, we got to eat, so I better make a bow.
We got to make a bow. I mean, he did go to Lehi and say, Dad, where do you want me to go hunt? That was a little bit different, but it didn't all come from personal revelation. Listen, I want you to make a bow, and I want you to go get these things from this part of the woods and go clear over here to this other part of the woods and dig a hole and find if that wasn't how it worked.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of times the Lord trusts us to do what we can. Do you care if I share another story?
Okay.
Sorry. So it's a chocolate story.
Good. I like this.
There was a company that ordered 150 or 125 little 2.5-inch square bars with their logo on it. And at first we were just going to do it white chocolate, which worked. And so I put a mock-up together, showed her, and she said, okay, I want 150. And then after the fact, she's like, well, I want it to be our brand, like our color. It was a credit card.
The chocolate was going to
She
look
wanted
like a
their brand.
card? Oh.
Yeah, it was a credit card company I was working for, and they wanted their brand on top, and they wanted to be colored. And I had, I think, maybe 3 weeks to put this together, and I did my test, and I thought, okay, I can do this. And then I got to 2 weeks, and I started playing around with it. And I tried everything. I could not get their color. I tried coloring my chocolate to match their color. Nothing was working. Um, my technique was a terrible technique. And then, like a week, maybe even, yeah,
Stressful.
maybe even 9 days before the order was ready, she was like, okay, I need it Thursday. I need it in like 4 days. I think this was on a Friday. I need it next Thursday. And I don't just need 125, I need 175. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, all right, Heavenly Father, I'm stuck. I've done everything I know with what knowledge I have. I don't know what else I can do to actually have a successful order and have it work out. And I really didn't know what I was going to do. And
That's a desperate prayer.
That's a desperate prayer.
Yeah.
And I left my work. I went home. I decided to let it go because I couldn't figure out the answer. And the next morning I woke up with the answer. You need to go find this Shablon type mold that you can do 30 at a time. And he kind of just put a few ideas in my head. So I hurried and ordered that. I ordered it next day so it would come in on Tuesday because I had till Thursday to
Oh
get
my
this done.
gosh.
And they turned out beautiful. They couldn't have turned out better.
Oh my.
It was him letting me go through what I needed to do and use all the skills that I already knew about. And then he stepped in and said, okay, why don't you try this? You know, it wasn't, hey, I'm gonna tell you all the details. You practice all these things up to this point, and there you go. The learning on this experience was fantastic. I tried a lot of different things. So,
Sorry, should have turned that off.
You want me to grab it?
Yeah, I'm just so.
Oh. You know, we're that kind of podcast. No editing, no nothing. We're just here to tell you a few stories, and hopefully we make some.
Yeah,
points.
we can't be bothered. We have.
So, anyways.
So we were also talking about nevertheless, right?
Yes.
So famous prayers. You have a nevertheless story. I have another. So one of the nevertheless stories in the scriptures is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? They're like, we're not, you can ask us to worship your God, and we're not going to do it. And we're so committed to not doing that even if our God doesn't show up to save us, we're still not doing it. It was kind of like a nevertheless, like whether he saves us or not, we're sticking with our commitment and our covenant, right? And then the Lord shows up in miraculous ways. And Jenny, you want to tell your nevertheless? Hold on, wait. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a tail on that. So we're talking about when you feel like you need something really badly and you are saying a desperate prayer and the option of saying nevertheless, especially when it comes to interpersonal relationships like our kids and our spouses, and like we want our marriages to work, we want our kids to be happy, we want our neighbors to feel, we want I want everybody to be happy. So do you.
Yeah.
We don't want people to have pain. But the Lord is like, okay, well, sometimes pain and sometimes difficulty puts someone in a position where they respond to me and they seek me out. So I wouldn't want to sidetrack.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get in the middle of that.
Yeah,
because that's the middle of progress.
So really. We have to be willing to say, this is my plan, Lord. I have this plan. I think this would be great. But we also have to say, nevertheless, if you have a better plan, help me be patient while you do your plan, and because I know your results will be good.
Yeah, and that's hard to do, especially in the chocolate world. You see all the stuff going around that is happening, and I would love to say this specific prayer and say, Lord, can you make this business more successful? Instead, what he wants me to do is let the girls take over and let him do what he's going to do. Let the girls do what they're going to do, and not be the person with the desperate prayer. Avoid the desperate prayer completely, which is,
in this case,
leave it to the Lord and let him do what He's going to do with it. My desperate prayer, and I love this desperate prayer, is, of course, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane saying, Lord, take this cup from me. And then he says, nevertheless. So his prayer is, look, I know it's going to be difficult. I know it's going to be hard. If you can, take it from me. Nevertheless, his perfect prayer, because he was perfect, was, I'm going to throw out, this is what might be nice, but I want to do what you want me to do. And I think that's the kind of prayer we want to end up with, eventually in all of our prayers. Lord, this is what I would love. And we're supposed to pray over our work and over our loved ones and over things. We're asked to do that. Mm-hmm. But when we add the word nevertheless, it allows us to maybe not be as heartbroken when things don't happen the other way, but it also allows God to do what he's going to do and allows for us to trust him.
Yeah, it's part of submitting to the Lord. So, the Lord, he just only wants our good. He's willing to die. Jesus died so we would just have even a chance. He didn't die and cement our salvation. No. He died so that he could give us a ticket. If you want to come to my play, if you want to come to my kingdom, here's a ticket. We have to choose whether we use the ticket or not. But it was worth it for him to do that. So, it's interesting to think about in that moment when Christ was saying, not my will, but thine be done. There was a very important reason why God needed Jesus to do that. And because it was the only way.
Yeah.
It was the only way. And God knew that. And Jesus knew that. But when he got there, and it was so awful and so unbearable and so unimaginable for us, and I love that the Lord sent him an angel to comfort him.
Yeah.
And I really wonder who that was.
Yeah.
But the Father sent his Son, an angel, to comfort him while he was doing the hardest thing that has ever been done. And the most meaningful, the most impactful. And he had that support. It wasn't mortal support.
Yeah.
It was heavenly support. But, and we will get that too.
Yeah, we get that too.
We might get mortal, but we might get heavenly.
Yeah, we might get a little bit of all of it. The question is, if we're set on what we want and we can't have that,
can we submit?
Yeah, can we submit? If we can't have the nevertheless, then we might never see it because we're so focused on the one part of the prayer that we want that we're missing, the possibilities.
Right.
So I don't know if we're at our 15 minutes.
We're probably way over 15 minutes.
Well, you guys.
18.
Until next time.
Yeah.
Which is a few minutes
Ciao.
for us.